As of this video, the Bond franchise has ended with a bang, and not the sort of bang that Bond movies usually end on. With the franchise on ice for the foreseeable future, we'll have to make do with a mere 70 years of books and movies ranging from excellent to... A couple of months ago I made a Patreon post comparing the book and movie versions of From Russia with Love. That was the second movie in the Bond film canon and the fifth novel featuring him. The sixth one became the first Bond movie, all thanks to the magic of recycling. Okay, so in 1956 Ian Fleming got a bit bored with writing James Bond in his Jamaican estate, and so he decided to kill him at the end of From Russia with Love. But while he was going through the motions of being published, he was working with another guy to make something called Commander Jamaica. The project fell through. Fleming took the remains and, having worked on this thing for the better part of a year, reconnected with his muse and turned it into a Bond novel. A couple of years later, producer Harry Saltzman decided to make a bid for Bond's movie rights. He got most of them, but not Thunderball, the latest novel at the time. So they decided to move forward with Dr. No. To make matters worse, film studios at the time weren't interested in James Bond. Spy films weren't a thing at the time, not as we know them anyway. The Hays Code was weakened, but its restrictions on everything from curse words to the length of an on-screen kiss were still used as guidelines. After years of selling, United Artists took a gamble and gave them just over $1 million to make the movie. Around half of the budget of To Kill a Mockingbird. Not a lot, but enough money to film on location, and to engage the services of a competent director and up-and-coming actor Sean Connery. The result? Dr. No was successful enough to prove that spy movies could make money, and create a franchise that stands to this day, even if this one is significantly more low-key than future films. Amusing when you remember that the book was criticized for being a bit silly. Most of the changes were made for ease of understanding and expediency. People who bought the novel are more likely to know 007's previous escapades. The movie-going audience certainly won't be, nor can you expect them to be interested in the explanation. The book went into great detail about Bond's feelings after his brush with death. He's still in recovery. His mission to Jamaica is not a matter of world security but an easy assignment to get him back in the groove. The missing relay and his assistant are supposed to be the most routine of inquiries. A man, a woman, the endless tropical paradises of the Caribbean. Who wouldn't disappear? It's only because Bond knows the man and joins the pieces between their disappearances and some tragedies on a nature-preserving Dr. No's island that things start heating up. The movie only has about 3 minutes to tell us all that there is to know about 007.
Bond. James Bond.
And it does it remarkably. The only thing that we have to imply misfortune are a line of dialogue on M's orders to replace his beloved Beretta, played by a much larger gun,
but it jammed on your last job and you spent 6 months in hospital in consequence.
with his now signature Walther PPK. That one only makes a token appearance in the book. Dr. No has already been highlighted as a possible threat by the Americans. No need for tragic accidents and rare bird conservation societies here. It seems that the rockets have been going off course because of interference that has been traced to the Jamaican area. The British have been collaborated with them, especially with CIA agent Felix Leiter, who hadn't showed up in the books for a couple of adventures and was last seen missing an extremity or two. Here we have him played by Jack Lord, who your parents may know from this. From here until we get to meet Dr. No, the plot doesn't really change that much. Bond gets to Jamaica and is made almost immediately. He figures the leak on the embassy by narrowing it down to the Chinese woman. It was the 50s, okay? We're lucky that Pinewood didn't want to be closer to the book in that regard. Quarrel gets introduced, and because the book where he met Bond hasn't happened yet, he works primarily for Leiter on this one. They also do one of Strangway's friends dirty by making him work for Dr. No. He's the one to blame for the tarantula in the bed. Not a centipede because those aren't quite as intimidating on film, nor was Sean Connery pants-shittingly terrified of them. We dump Leiter before making it to Dr. No's island, as we need to make space for the woman who launched a million homages, Honey Rider. My millennial eyes tell me that Halle Berry coming out of the ocean was better, but Ursula Andress is the reason that this scene is iconic. Some hunting later, our heroes are caught or roasted by Dr. No's henchmen. You know, it's nice to know that for all his ruthless efficiency, Dr. No ensured that his swan vehicle had tailfins on it. Those didn't get mentioned in the book, but then again, this is when we start to stray from it. That decontamination room wasn't on the book. Dr. No's plan to divert missiles was strictly pre-nuclear. He wasn't working for Spectre either.
Spectre? Spectre. Special Executive for Counterintelligence, Terrorism, Revenge, Extortion.
On account of Fleming not having invented them yet. Since Dr. No was supposed to be a Fu Manchu ex-spy in the book, I consider his film equivalent to be an upgrade. Especially since we also dispense with that whole giant squid business. Now right, I should talk about that. I've no idea why. Maybe because this didn't start as a Bond story, but we get an obstacle course after Bond is hauled back to his cell following the fancy dinner all supervillains are encouraged to give their nemesis. In the movie, his cell is just that. The electric grating is just a safety measure, and that horrible heat and dangerous falls are incidental features of a horribly overbuilt HVAC. In the book, the cell and all the obstacles are part of a survival course. Dr. No wishes to see how much pain can a person take before giving up, and has fitted them all with observation windows, not to mention an additional pipe filled with venomous spiders. At the end, Bond isn't conveniently dropped into the decontamination room, but into a walled-off grotto where he has to fight his deadliest enemy yet, a giant squid. Thank Christ they didn't try to do a squid fight with 1960s tech. That was all hot and corny in film then. For a modern movie, it was much better to showcase our utopian future. A world where the atom will provide us with clean power for all the automated lawnmowers and flying cars that the greatest minds of a generation are working on even as we speak. Thus, Dr. No's hands weren't sliced by the tongs from which he stole. A nuclear accident took them away. The transmitter causing all the interference for American launches is also nuclear powered, requiring a whole room of people to make it work. It's here where we have our new, slightly more dignified climax. Dr. No puts a pretty even fight with Bond, until his hands betray him and he slides into boiling radioactive water. Jesus Christ, that's horrible. Especially when you remember that he was supposed to have a grip like a motherfucker with those. Still, better than, being buried under a mountain of guano like on the book. I think everyone escaped. And really, who needs the rest of the book where Bond has to file paperwork and explain what happened to his bosses? Both Dr. No the novel and Dr. No the film had a mixed reception among the critics. Then as ever, thanks to the perception of Bond glorifying sex and violence and a self-indulgent, materialistic lifestyle. To some extent, the studios were right to not want the film. The Vatican condemned it, and the reviews were anything but unified in praise. Audiences, on the other hand, absolutely loved the film. President Kennedy, who loved the books, had it screened at the White House, and a second movie was greenlit as soon as UA realized they weren't going to take a bath on this one. From a rehash of a failed television project and a couple of creatives with a tiny budget, we ended up with a great supply of movies to see and enjoy. And saddened that Idris Elba decided that he really wanted to be a singing, dancing cat.